Hey there, movie buffs, time for another review of a recent release. This time I'll be covering the triumphant return of a cult figure loved by a niche group of followers. A man known for his strong presence and controversial impact who hasn't been seen on a screen since 1988. Of course, I'm talking about Ronald Reagan and the recently released biopic, Reagan.
I will be frank with you that as a citizen, I would not like to see any political party outlawed on the basis of its ideology, because I still believe, Mr. Chairman, that democracy can handle it.
I was a brand new KGB officer, given my first intelligence assignment. A certain actor and union leader.
Dutch, there's a purpose for your life.
You can run from a bully for so long, but after a while, you're gonna have to stand up to him.
It's my boy!
There's about to be another war right here in Hollywood. The commies on one side, the mob on the other. And you're right in the middle, son.
I've often said that there are only two reasons to watch or even make a biopic. A. An interesting subject matter whose life story simply must be told, and B. A unique narrative angle that makes for innovative storytelling. Well, the large majority of biopics released in the last 20 years failed to meet either criterion. These movies are quickly made and cynically presented as mere award hopefuls. Facts and accuracy take second place, since all that seems to matter are a few money shots. I'm thinking about Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury in Wembley during Live Aid, in Bohemian Rhapsody, a set of scenes that hopefully will secure the movie's lead a slot come January the following year when the Oscar nominees are announced. And let's face it, this is only one of the reasons why most recently released biopics are utter crap. When we submit Reagan to this two-step test, the result is a positive one. Whether you find the subject matter interesting is an entirely personal question, influenced by political inclinations, pre-existing opinions, and your personal level of cynicism towards American politics. But when it comes to the narrative angle, director Sean McNamara and screenwriter Howard Klausner found in the fictional characters of Viktor Petrovich and Andrei Novikov an excellent and somewhat refreshing storytelling anchor that portrays Ronald Reagan as a crusader and a key enabler in the fall of the evil empire, as told by the members of the opposite side of the barricade. The biographical drama, originally produced in 2020, is set in the present day. As I mentioned already, we are immediately introduced to fictional retired KGB spy Viktor Petrovich, played by John Voight, who's offering Russian agent and political hopeful Andrei Novikov, played by Alex Sparrow, insights on America and lecturing him on the decline and fall of the Soviet Union and the man who made it all happen. Petrovich, the Soviet agent who first flagged the then rising GOP star Ronald Reagan to the Kremlin, shares the rich file he had on the former president. Using this narrative arc, we are shown the life of Ronald Reagan, played by Dennis Quaid, focusing on his iconic journey from a Hollywood actor to the role of the lifetime, that of the 40th President of the United States. From his first job as a lifeguard to his work on the radio, religion, patriotism, and a strong sense of duty are always by his side. As we are shown, Reagan's early years, showcasing his humble upbringing in Illinois and his initial foray into the entertainment industry. We follow the actor as he gains fame as a charismatic thespian and marries into Hollywood royalty. And how his decline in popularity as an actor, his divorce from Jane Wyman, played by Mina Suvari, and the support he received from both the GOP and industry tycoons, as well as his second wife, Nancy Davis, later Reagan, played by Penelope Ann Miller, launched his political career. One that started with a victory in the gubernatorial election in California, and that culminated with the former actor holding the most powerful position in the free world. Whether you enjoy watching Reagan depends entirely on your fascination with the man and your ability to wear a pair of apolitical glasses during the duration of the movie. This alone will dictate if you are willing to accept the movie's flaws, value the biopic's positives, and weigh them accordingly. Because when all is said and done, Reagan is a decent biopic, with all the positives and negatives you'll find in any other above-average entry in the biographical subgenre. Of course, considering the nature of the ideology and values held by the titular figure, left-leaning critics and viewers will nitpick and poke holes in aspects that would otherwise be ignored or downplayed if the movie dealt with a liberal figure. And it's easy to understand why. The movie does play out as a hagiographic title that portrays the iconic president in an extremely positive light, even when it showcases the real-life criticisms the president was subject to during his 1984 re-election campaign. Another infamous chapter of the Reagan administration, the Iran-Contra scandal, is mentioned, but there are only a few scenes dedicated to the topic, with this episode mainly treated in a superficial way. But guess what? This isn't a unique criticism directed at this movie. Most of all other biopics tackling democratic leaders or entertainment figures from the opposite side of the political aisle include similar flaws. And like any other biopic, you'll find in Reagan plenty of goofs and inaccuracies. Even pivotal moments that weren't included, such as the 1980 Republican debates and the backlash and criticism Reagan faced from his future running mate George H. Bush. You'll also find scenes that had no reason to exist or be included in the movie, such as the shooting of the Korean Airlines Flight 007 in 1983, a key moment in global politics shown and treated in this movie with the dramatic intensity and sensibility of the main crash in Airport 1975. As per usual, good acting does help to mitigate some of the flaws in the execution, and of course the cast is pretty much a who's who of Republicans in Hollywood. Dennis Quaid gives his all with an admirable performance that isn't solely hinged on key moments and quotes, like the "there you go again" quip of the 1980 and 1984 debate and the iconic request "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," uttered in Berlin in the late 1980s. Quaid never portrays Reagan as a smiling buffoon who lets his optimism preclude any other sentiment from ever taking over. Penelope Ann Miller delivers a convincing take on Nancy Reagan, showcasing the First Lady's active role behind the scenes. John Voight is brought on board and delivers an interesting take, even if totally one-sided, exposing the Soviet perspective on the 40th President of the United States. And if these names and performances alone don't convince you, then may I present you conservative actor Robert David playing Leonid Brezhnev, caterpillar eyebrows included and all. A true feast for the eyes. Christian Sevelt's gorgeous cinematography further assists Dennis Quaid in portraying an idealized version of Ronald Reagan that is sure to upset all the left-leaning Gen Xers and millennials in the audience. And here lies the issue with Reagan and the limitations of a conservative title's mass appeal. You simply can't win with some people these days. You could in the past. I'm thinking of the well-balanced take on Richard Nixon's life and career brought to us by one of the most left-leaning directors in the business. Of course, this was 1995 and not 2024. Perhaps that's why Reagan should actually be seen by more people. Because regardless of one's political inclination, Ronald Reagan represents a bygone era when people, and by people I mean a sane and receptive majority, could be persuaded to change their vote based on values and ideals. Because landslide majorities like the ones won by Richard Nixon in 1972, where the GOP candidate carried 60% of the popular vote in 149 states, and Ronald Reagan himself, who in his 1984 re-election won 58% of the popular vote and also won 49 states, weren't won by registered Republicans. They were won by appealing to both working-class and middle-class voters who traditionally voted for the Democratic Party and the candidate's charisma. Reagan will not give viewers a full answer on how America turned right, but it will certainly provide a starting point to those seeking to understand how an individual led one of the most silent yet impactful political revolutions in the Western Hemisphere. After last year's backlash against Sound of Freedom, nobody was expecting Reagan to nab glowing reviews. Those familiar with Sean McNamara's recent brand of faith-based movies and the backlash received by two of the movie's cast members know that the title's fate had been sealed long before a single scene was shot. But as a title that takes a structure we've seen time and time again, attempts and succeeds to give it a narrative spin, and portrays its subject matter with heart and emotion without relying too much on the best-known clips, Reagan comes across as a solid effort, and certainly one that aims to inspire rather than divide. A harmless and interesting watch.